Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Go Ballistic. A thrilling weekend of sport, both in the Premiership and beyond, with a fantastic end to the Masters, going right down to the wire. Scottish Premiership title race isn't quite going down to the wire, but it's been extended by another few days.
Yeah.
Rangers against Aberdeen. Was Barry Ferguson right to make so many changes at Pittodrie?
Yeah, because they could have played the first team and they could have won 10-0 yesterday and it would have made no difference whatsoever to the Premiership title race. He was right to leave out all his big hitters. The only thing that will save Rangers' season and give Barry Ferguson an opportunity to stay on is if Rangers can continue to progress in Europe. They've got a chance in Bilbao. It's maybe a slim chance, but the chance is still there. And he wanted to keep as many players fresh as he could for the game.
Let down by a couple. Kris Boyd, who you'll hear from later, was speaking about some of these players maybe should never be seen again. Ross McCausland, no one likes to go in, tough on a young player, but a bit of a mindless sending off. Rafael Fernandez, through no fault of his own, goes off injured after 20 minutes. Yeah. How big's this clear-out going to be?
I think it will be sizable. Fernandez will obviously go back to France. He hasn't really made any impact whatsoever. Ross McCausland, you see it sometimes, Ryan, with young guys coming through. There's flashes of real promise, and then they just don't fulfil the potential. And you begin to wonder if Ross McCausland's going to be in that latter category. He finished up at right back against Bilbao in the first leg on Thursday. Barry Ferguson asked him to play right wing back yesterday. It's clearly not his bag. He couldn't deal with the defensive aspect of it, got himself sent off, and you do wonder what the future will hold for Ross McCausland. And listen, and several others, a lot of younger guys out on loan just now, a lot of fringe players, regardless who the manager is, whether it is Barry, whether it's a new guy, I think it'll be quite a sizable clear-out.
Two players that maybe didn't do themselves any harm. Now, Hamza Egaman, I don't think there was any doubt that he would be a player that Rangers want to keep, but he showed a different side on Sunday there. Probably worked his socks off and was well. I think the first goal that's chopped off, not a lot to be said about that, but he keeps working away and gets a goal after half-time. And then Yanis Hadji, who's had a lot of talk about his future, pops up with an absolute screamer with the last kick of the ball. Yeah,
a very good goal. You would have thought Rangers' chance had gone when Cyril Dessers hit the post at the start of that move, but Jeffrey managed to recycle the ball, and it's a great goal by Hadji. I tend to wonder if Hadji's future is more likely to be decided by Hadji than it is by Barry Ferguson and the Rangers board. I'm sure, partly because of his name, but also because of his ability. He is a regular Romanian international, and he can produce the type of goal that he scored yesterday at Pittodrie. I think there will be teams keen to get him in the summer, and I think he'll probably have final say in where he goes.
Just before we move on to Celtic and a brief look ahead, Coffee Club in midweek will take a in-deep look at this. But Athletic Bilbao had a comeback of their own against Rayo Vallecano. They're now sweating over the fitness of Iñaki Williams as well. So a couple of little signs of positivity for Rangers there, because he was a key man.
Yeah, listen, I know what you mean. He is their captain. He's the most experienced player. He was key when they won the Copa del Rey last year, I should say. It would be a setback for them. But you saw with the win last night, they do have other players. Nico came off the bench and scored. Sanset and players like that. So at home, they will want to do to Rangers what they did to Roma in the last round. But it would be a setback if we didn't have Iñaki.
Celtic, back to their best at the weekend. 5-star performance, just in time for the semi-final against St Johnstone 2. What did you take from the performance at Parkhead? Brendan Rodgers, the team that he named as well, bringing James Forrest back in?
Well, I mean, there were a couple of takeaways. First, if you're St Johnstone, all you've done is made Celtic very angry. They took it out in Kilmarnock at the weekend, and they'll probably take it out in St Johnstone in the Scottish Cup semi-final at Hampden this Sunday, I would imagine. Brendan Rodgers had spoken the previous week at Dermot Park about players coasting. He didn't name names, but when you saw the team list on Saturday, you knew exactly who he meant.
Absolutely.
Trusty was out, Schlupp was out, Jota was out, Kuhn was out, and it might take them a week or two to get back in off the back of that performance at the weekend. Forrest back in. He didn't get his title medal at the weekend, but when he does, he'll become the most decorated Celt of all time. It's a fantastic achievement. Callum McGregor's not very far behind them, Ryan. So, big win for Celtic. They're on the brink of 4 in a row, and they want to put St Johnstone away on Sunday.
There's a big question, but where does James Forrest rank in the all-time list of Celtic greats? In terms of medals, we know where he ranks in it, or where he's going to rank. But in terms of a player, he's also got that amazing record that he might not quite get of scoring for so many seasons in a row.
Yeah, you would love to see him get a goal this season, so that's one, for every campaign that he's played. He's a throwback to, a kind of one-club man. Even Callum McGregor's played elsewhere. He had that spell at Notts County away on loan years ago. James Forrest has played for no one else. And I would actually like to think when he does retire, he just retires and he goes away. I can't imagine James Forrest playing for anyone else.
No.
He's been a superb servant to Celtic. You just listen to the way Brendan Rodgers spoke of him after the defeat at St Johnstone. There was no criticism attached to James Forrest because Brendan Rodgers says James Forrest gets it. He understands what it means to play for Celtic. Whether you're playing Real Madrid or whether you're playing St Johnstone, you get the same from James Forrest. There will have been better footballers who have pulled on the hoops. James Forrest will be the first to tell you that. But
humble man.
He should go down as one of the all-time greats.
So you'll hear from Kris Boyd about all of the Premiership action at the weekend. We'll touch a little bit on the relegation battle because all 4 of the clubs down there lost at the weekend: Kilmarnock, St Johnstone, Dundee and Ross County. You start picking points up from somewhere.
Yeah, listen, it's not going to be pretty. I think, St Johnstone beat Celtic last week. I think they've just left themselves too much to do after the split. I really do. The thing when they all play each other is somebody's bound to get points in these games, and I think they'll just edge away from St Johnstone. I think they will go down. Up until yesterday, I thought Dundee would be okay because they've got goals in the team and they've got Simon Murray there, and they've got bits and bobs of quality. Lyle Cameron to get back Josh Mulligan. But the beating they took yesterday at Hibs, they need to get that out of their system very quickly. Otherwise, they are going to be in trouble.
Now, talking about a team in trouble, Hearts missing out the top 6, bordering on unacceptable for a club of that size.
Yeah.
And our very own Bill Leckie in his column on today's paper, Neil Critchley, is he on a sugary peg? Is that unfair?
You can ask me this on Saturday night if you like, Ryan. I saw Hearts at Fir Park on Saturday. They were terrible. They were absolutely dreadful. They had 2 chances to get the top 6, home to Dundee United, away to Motherwell. They took 1 point from 6. They didn't score a goal. They rarely looked like scoring a goal at Fir Park on Saturday. There was no impetus. There was no push. You would never have thought that a win would guarantee them the top 6. There was just nothing about them going forward at all. Lawrence Shankland came on at half-time, dribbled a shot past the post in the 97th minute. They just look a shadow of the team that finished 3rd last season. If they lose the Cup semi-final to Aberdeen on Saturday lunchtime, I think there'll be real scrutiny in Neil Critchley. I know it sounds harsh, he's just in the door earlier on in the season, but the team hasn't improved for me. It hasn't improved at all. They look toothless. There's nothing in the middle of the park. There's very little up top when Shankland's not in the type of form he was in last season, and they need to halt this slide.
We'll watch that with keen eyes. And to end on a high note for this little section before you hear from Boydie, Arbroath winning the league. Brilliant. Back up. You'll see some of the pictures here of the pitch invasion. I mean, Arbroath were that, it was only a few years ago, it was the fairy tale and they were so close to coming up to the top flight. They've had to go down. They were bottom of the league after 7 games as well. Remarkable turnaround and another good story over there.
It is a good story, and fair play to Colin Hamilton and David Gold, their rookie managers, co-managers who were sort of thrust into the job when Jim McIntyre left early in the season. They get it. They understand Arbroath. They know the club inside out, and they know what's required. They've got a good mix of players there. There's experienced players who help Colin and David. The likes of Ryan Down, Ryan Flynn and Tam O'Brien and guys like that, Keith Watson. But they've also brought in young talent. Fraser Taylor on loan for St Mirren, scored at the weekend again. Young Callum Penman came in from St Mirren as well in January. He's contributed. So they've got a really good balance of players there. And it looked a very tight league for a long, long time, Ryan. And then just at the business end, they've just scorched away from everyone and they deserve the title. And listen, they'll be a good addition back to the Championship.
Yep. Congratulations to the Red Lichties. And you heard briefly us talking about Dundee. Show you a little bit here of our own Derek McGregor speaking to Tony Docherty, and right after that you'll have Kris Boyd.
There's a lot of people, Tony, think that Aberdeen maybe should have won the league 2015-16.
Aye.
Ronnie Dyler Celtic. There wasn't a great gap between you.
No, I think that was the time that we could have won. I think we'd 4 second place in our time, in our 8 years there. We'd 4. We qualify for Europe every year. And I think 5 cup finals we were in or whatever. But that year, and I think January was pivotal. we lost our number 1 and our number 9. Danny Ward, if you remember, was a goalkeeper.
Tremendous signing.
He get recalled.
Yeah.
By Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool, and Adam Rooney, really innocuous, pulled his thigh, you know, in a training session we did indoor, and that really, when you look back on it, I think the day you said it was at Motherwell, when I remember just looking at Celtic at the early games, Celtic were losing in injury time.
Tom Rogic scored a 90th minute winner, a worldie, an absolute worldie at Kilmarnock.
Yeah.
And the reaction, I was there that game, the reaction of Celtic said it all.
Aye.
Because they were immediately concerned about Aberdeen and how Aberdeen were getting on.
And we went out that day, I think we went out doing the warm-up knowing they were getting beat, and you thought this could be the day, this is where it all flips. And it did all flip, but the wrong way, unfortunately.
Well, we can now head down to Ayrshire Sun Sports' Kris Boyd. We've seen the last fixtures before the top 6 split, Boyd. We're just waiting now on the fixtures post-split to be confirmed. Celtic will win the title, but they're having to wait for it despite blasting your old team Kilmarnock 5-1 Saturday lunchtime.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were excellent, and you know, on Saturday. You know, obviously the response. I think, you know, we spoke about it last week. Brendan Rodgers obviously wasn't happy with the performance in Perth, and whatever has happened during the week, I think the players realised that they had to get back to performing at a level that they have shown. And you know, you've got to say, absolutely blew Killie away inside 20-25 minutes. They were back to their best. Some terrific strikes in the game. Some really good goals. And that man Maeda on the score sheet again. You know, I thought Brendan Rodgers, he would have been delighted with that response come the weekend, because he'll know. And I think he's kind of touched on it. If they had continued to perform, you know, at the level they did at away to St Johnstone, it would have been a difficult game. Yeah. You know, the semi-final. Sorry, not only the semi-final, but Hibs and Aberdeen in the final. And you know, he wants to get it done as quickly as he possibly can, but he would be absolutely delighted with the response from his team on Saturday.
The ones that were left out after that defeat at Perth, we're talking Trusty and Schlupp, Jota and Kuhn. Are they a problem getting back in now? Because surely for the semi-final, he can't change a side that's blasted Kilmarnock the way they did.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, that you know, I think they were more or less warned. Well, they were told after the game that it wasn't good enough. There's some people coasting, and I think you've seen that with, you know, the changes that Brendan Rodgers made. He's got a big squad. He's got players that are underperforming, you know, and have for a few weeks now. But I mean, it can be difficult when you get to this stage when you know the league's done. But you know, there's other things to motivate Celtic, and you know, because of the way Rodgers is, and because he wants everything to be perfect, then you can't take your foot off the gas. You need to keep going, and you're right. A few of them might be, you know, looking at it thinking to myself, I was absolutely nailed on to play, you know, the semi-final, but because of my performance in Perth, I don't think, you know, the guys that came in at the weekend have shown. And that's what happens when you're at a big club. If you don't perform, somebody takes your jersey. You might have to wait to get back in. You know, I thought Greg Taylor was outstanding as well on Saturday. Yeah. Another one who, listen, I don't know.
Is this him trying to win this move to Rangers that you were suggesting a week or two ago?
Maybe.
Trying to catch the eye of Barry Ferguson?
You never know. You just never know. But I tell you, he might have actually got the eye of Brendan Rodgers again. You know, because he'd obviously out the team. Brendan.
Aye, but Brendan wanted to keep him. He's not, you know, he's never hidden from that fact that he wants to keep him in the club. He got the Stadium Man of the Match award. He was out in the pitch before the game with his newborn baby. There was a lot of love for Greg Taylor at the weekend.
Yeah, but I mean, Roger, I don't know. I mean, sometimes some Celtic fans they're hard to please. You know, I think, and listen, it might be the fact that, and listen, it happens all the time, doesn't it? You know, sometimes your Scottish boys seem to get a lot more stick when things are not at a level, and you know, we've seen it at both clubs over the years that you know, it seems to be the Scottish ones that will get criticised when, you know, the level of performances is not what they expect. But I think if you go and analyse Greg Taylor over the piece that since he's arrived at Celtic, considering, you know, it was from Kilmarnock, and that's no disrespect, but you see, you know, Celtic going and spending absolute fortunes elsewhere, and it hasn't. I mean, they might. What? There's at least 2. Maybe even 3 left backs have arrived to try and you know, displace Greg Taylor from it, and he's still going. You know, I think, you know, Brendan's obviously touched on that he wants to keep him. You know, maybe just the last few weeks, I mean, Schlupp's performances have dropped. There's no doubt. Greg Taylor's got himself back in. Whether Jeffrey Sloot is one that Brendan Rodgers wants to keep a hold of, I mean, it's well documented that Kieran Tierney will join the club in the summer. So I can understand Greg Taylor's thought process of he's went from being the number one to now going to be two, to signing a new deal. Maybe he's thinking, I'm not going to play a lot of minutes. But, when you look at Kieran Tierney, I think it's impossible for him to play more or less every single game next season. And for me, I think Brendan, did he not touch on it at the weekend? They're hopeful that they can maybe start talks and try and, get something sorted to try and keep him at the club. Because, for me, as I said, Celtic fans, a lot of them have a go at him. And I don't agree with it because since he's arrived from Kilmarnock, I think he's done a really, really good job. It was a couple of £1 million, but when you consider what else has come in to try and displace him and other big signings that have failed to deliver, value for money, Greg Taylor has been a success for Celtic.
You touched on Kilmarnock there. Are you worried about them, Boyd? That's 2-5-1 defeats in their last 2 away games. I think they've lost 7 in the spin away from Rugby Park. But as I said at the start, we're waiting on the fixtures to come out.
Yeah.
We don't know who they've got or where they've got them. Would you worry that away form is going to cause them problems?
Well, you've just said there that away from home, it seems to be the Kilmarnock of a couple of seasons ago, where you just couldn't win a game of football. But to flip that, their home form's very good again. Yeah. And that's where they'll pick up points. Listen, I've said it for weeks. I don't think Kilmarnock will be in trouble. They're still, they've still got that cushion from St Johnstone. It was always going to be difficult. You knew that you're going to get reaction from Celtic because of the performance they put in last week. It's difficult going to Celtic Park at the best of times. But for Kilmarnock, it would be a worry the way they're conceding goals, though, Roger. I think that's you can lose games of football, but the way you're conceding the goals would be a little cause for concern because you look at St Mirren the week before, there were easy goals that they gave up. The exact same at the weekend there, albeit there was a couple of decent strikes in there and a couple of decent moves, but you'd expect Lewis Mayo to move his feet to the back post and do better. Tony Ralston's a great piece of skill, and I know it's late on, but you'd expect somebody to defend it a little bit better. Hatate's a great strike, but even Hatate's, was it the second one? Yeah. The second one, when there's people jumping about everywhere and sliding in, like stay on your feet, defend, and that might be a little concern for Derek, but I still think he'll have more than enough, and especially at home. Once this fixture comes out, I think they'll do 3 home games. So I mean, if that is the case, then I fully expect Kilmarnock to be fine. Okay. So Johnstone back to their old ways, though.
Well, there is that. They defeated the D-United. We're going to say Celtic, of course, huge win on Saturday. There will be a few champagne corks waiting to be popped in the 95th minute yesterday. Yanis Hadji's made Celtic wait for the league title. You were up there yesterday. When Aberdeen went 2-0 up, after Ross McCausland's red card, there looked no way back for Rangers. No. What did you make? In the second half, they did dig in.
I thought, I touched on it at half-time the game. For me, Ingerman done okay the first half, but the two behind them were, were nowhere to be seen. Didn't take part in the game, hence the reason why they were, whipped at half-time. Listen, I mean, for me, you look at Danilo, and I know he's had these injury problems, but he's obviously been back training for a period of time now. Barry Ferguson and his staff felt as if yesterday was the right time to put him in. For me, he just looks like a player that is really, really, really struggling right now. Really struggling. And Cortez, I mean, you've not even paid the money for him yet. And I touched him. I mean, it was actually nice to see him back in the pitch, albeit only for 45 minutes. But at least we know where he is now. But at the same time, his performance yesterday was nowhere good enough from a Rangers player. But Barry got a reaction.
Will there be people at Ibrox looking at the small print of this Cortez deal to see if they can somehow slip out of it? Because in a summer where the budget's not going to be huge, Boyd, even if the 49ers come in, you can't imagine it's going to be a wipeout budget. £4 million is going to be a lot of your money away on a guy that hasn't convinced anyone.
No, I mean, there's no getting away from it. I said that a couple of weeks ago in the column, Roger, that if there was any way that Rangers can get out of this deal, or at least try to, then they've got to take advantage of it, because it's what, £3 million or whatever. I mean, it's a lot of money, as you say. Yep. Where there's other areas that you think Rangers need that money to spend to get in players that are regular players that you can depend on turning up week in, week out. And, for me, it's already been a waste of money if it's just been wages that's been paid so far. And now tying into a longer term contract and spending £3 million, whatever it may be, that it doesn't look great for Rangers. I thought defensive for the first half, from the front, Rangers looked really, really poor. It was so easy for Aberdeen to get at the back line, lose another 2 goals as well. Albeit, listen, fantastic strike from Leighton Clarkson for the free kick. The second one's a well-worked goal from Aberdeen's point of view. Gay gets on the end of it. But, I thought the defending, Robin Proper, passing on, people again are trying to pass on people. Just defend, do your job. The exact same with NCL at the front post. He's too far towards his own goal. He needs to come 2 or 3 yards up, and then he can maybe cut that pass out. I think Finlay Curtis was done on the left-hand side. Some good moving from Shady Morris. But I thought, Finlay Curtis recovered for me. I thought he done okay, especially second half. I thought he done well. The substitutions for Rangers obviously gave them a lift. There was a bit more energy in the second half. Bajrami got out to the left because he really struggled in the middle of the pitch as well. But when he went out the left, he got a couple of runs and looked as if he was starting to create. But good finish from Igaman, albeit Aberdeen won't be happy the way that it got there. You'd expect them to win their headers, but good finish. And then it was a wonderful finish from Yanis Hadji, because that's not easy. It's not easy to take that one coming back across you, Roger, and put it away in that far corner. It was a
It was a good goal. Should Igaman have had one in the first half? The one that Curtis got to the byline. You see all the furore when Alistair Johnson at Easter Road, Celtic had a goal ruled out from Maeda, and the SFA said that was a wrong call because you couldn't tell the ball was over the line. Could you tell the ball was over the line yesterday?
I don't think you could, but you had to go with on-field decision in the referee. The linesman blew. The linesman put his flag up, and the referee, Steve McLean, gave the goal kick. So listen, we'll never know. And that's going to be a recurring theme when things like that happen, because we don't have the technology that can define whether the ball is 100% out. We're all guessing. It's a talking point for all of us. We'll talk about it, and we'll analyse it till the cows come home. But the reality is, we will never ever know what the 100% outcome was, and it's going to keep continuing until we get the proper equipment that allows us to define whether it's in or out.
We don't know that. I'll tell you what we do know. We know that Hibs are flying and Dundee are banging trouble. 4-0 at Easter Road. Kieran Bowie off the bench and get a couple. 17 unbeaten in the league for Hibs. It goes back to match a record in 1948, even before I was in the Go Boyd.
I thought you covered that. What was the score that 1940? Did you not cover it?
I did the man-by-man ratings. It was a great performance. Laurie Riley got a 9.
9?
But Dundee, 71 goals they've conceded in 33 league games. They're in the relegation playoff place. They got a chasing in Edinburgh yesterday. Are Hibs now in pole position for 3rd, and are Dundee in pole position for 11?
I've got to be honest, Roger. I think a lot of, because of the run that Hibs had been on, in Dundee, you'd expected Hibs to do a lot of the ball and try and push Dundee back, and the pace that Dundee have got. I think a lot of Hibs fans, and I know they're confident, and the team had been flat. The team had been flying. I think a lot of people would have been going to that game yesterday thinking we need to perform here today, or there's a potential for us to drop points because of, as I said, the threat that Dundee have got in the counter attack. But again, it tells you, what this Hibs team is all about. I mean, to go and absolutely batter Dundee 4-0, annihilate them. It's a huge result. There. Huge, because you'd have been looking at. I mean, I touched on it yesterday after the game. I'm sure Jim Goodwin, David Gray would have been sitting when they seen that Rangers team and thinking, what's the chances of that? The chance for Aberdeen against Rangers to go and get the 3 points, and they should have. I know we're not really touched on it there. I thought Aberdeen the second half were really poor in terms of the management of the game and the substitutions as well. Would be a talking point for me. But for the two managers that have been thinking themselves, it's not exactly what you want. I know Rangers have got European football to worry about on Thursday night, but for David Gray to then get the performance from his team, it might have helped them. His message might have been, look, we have to do this job ourselves. Nobody's going to do us any favours. Not that you're looking for them, but you have to concentrate yourself. Go and get the 3 points. That's exactly what they've done.
What a weekend for Hibs as well, because on Saturday they see Hearts miss out in the top 6. I was at Fir Park. They were toothless. They lacked urgency. They lacked creativity. They lacked just about everything you would expect a good team
That
to
makes
have.
sense. That makes sense to leave your number one striker on the bench.
Well, listen, there was a few in the Hearts team. They made a couple of changes at half-time, including putting Lawrence Shankland on for Musa Drama. They could have taken off 5 of them at half-time, Boydie. St Mirren are in the top 6 for the 3rd season in the run. Great result for Stephen Robinson. They've celebrated by giving Jonah Ayunga a new contract today. But Hearts, for me, they need to beat Aberdeen at Hampden on Saturday, or I think Neil Critchley is already under intense scrutiny.
Even if if they do beat Hearts, if they do beat Aberdeen on Saturday, I think he's under massive pressure because again, even yesterday speaking about it, Hearts have failed. There is no doubt about it. They've failed this season. You can't get away from it. People might sit and say, well, where were they when Neil Critchley came in? Hibs were in the exact same position. Look what they've been able to do, turn it around. Yeah. Hearts did they pick up 1-1 against Dundee United at home. Albeit, listen, started the game brightly, could have won that.
Dundee United at home and Motherwell away, and they don't score a goal.
Don't score a goal. Added into the fact as well, though, Roger, and this has probably been forgotten about now as well when you go back to the Europa Conference game as well against the Moldovan minnows, where you thought it was just an absolute certainty that Hearts were going to win that game as well. Yeah. Failed to deliver there, so there's another negative in this season for Hearts. So I think for me, Neil Critchley, listen, he's came in and he's turned it around. He's got results, but Hearts need to be in the top 6. They're the 3rd biggest club in the country. No getting away from it. They're the 3rd biggest club. Sell out every single week, and they have underperformed. There is no doubt. As I said, for me, he's a manager that's under pressure because of that European result back. When was that, January? And then the last 2 games. Yeah, I get people like Lawrence Shankland. They might not be at the level of what they were last season in terms of scoring goals, but I just cannot for the life of me work out why you wouldn't start your main attacking threat when you need to win a game of football. It's
more likely to score than anybody else. I know James Wilson was suspended, but Cabangu isn't playing the way he did. Drama was dreadful at Fir Park on Saturday. Wilson's back for the Cup semi-final. He'll obviously go straight back in, but I think Hearts need to make major changes in that front 6. They don't look as if they're going to shed a lot of goals in their defence. Steinwender and McCart look fine. The fullbacks look fine. But it's that front 6, Boydie. You need more. You expect more from a Hearts team. You expect more urgency, pace, creativity. They had none of that.
Well, you touch on the pace and the creativity. Aberdeen have got pace, that's for sure. They will test Hearts at the weekend. They've got pace. They're direct as well. They can go forward. Nisbet looks as if he's got his confidence back. Tidy enough player in terms of linking the play and getting runners off him. You look at Hearts and I cannot believe for where they were. I mean, I thought they were an absolute stick on for the top 6. The run they were on, they looked as if they'd turned the corner. The signing of McCart in January as well. They might have lost a couple of goals. You're thinking if you'd a proper defender in there, that would have. But McCart's come in and he has done well. But as you say, it's the other side of the game. They're just struggling to, 1, create any opportunities, 2, take them. And I get that when you've got players that might be underperforming and struggling for confidence, but. As you say, it was 2, James Wilson and Shankland. Wilson suspended Shankland on the bench. It was 2. Cabangu's done well for Hearts, scored goals. Yeah. But it's been with Shankland because he can see his runs, he can see his pass.
It seems a ridiculous thing to say, but the point that Motherwell and Hearts got in that 0-0 draw might be handy for them in the final analysis because the 4 teams below them all lost at the weekend and it just keeps Motherwell and Hearts
I think listen, Hearts there's absolutely no chance Hearts will get involved in a playoff or the relegation. I think if you probably get somebody to sit down and work it out, they won't be far off of being safe now because you need everybody else to pick up maximum points, which is impossible because they're all going to play each other. But for me, looking at Motherwell, it could be a big point for them.
Yeah,
I mean, I know, and I think we touched on it last week. For Motherwell's point of view, yes, they had to. Top six was an outside chance. If they beat Hearts and obviously hoped that St Mirren didn't win, then. But more importantly for Motherwell, for me anyway, they had to be wary of what's going on behind them. Especially after last week with them all picking up points, and then you're thinking, we're going to get dragged back into this if you're Motherwell, because they're another one, Roger. They look toothless as well.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Don't look as if there's going to, even with the defensive problems they had, and Kofi Balmer went off again. They looked okay at the back. They were fine at the back, but as you say, it's going forward. Tony Watt and Tawanda Maswarisi were brought in, didn't do too much. Luke Armstrong and Harry Payton get thrown on, didn't do too much. No, I completely agree with you. I completely agree.
So I mean, I think for me, Motherwell, again, we speak, about the fixtures, but the first couple of games in this bottom six are going to be crucial for a few football clubs, because if they end up, if you take those 4 teams that are in it and maybe chuck Motherwell into it now as well, if say St Johnstone's to go and pick up a victory, all of a sudden everything just becomes tighter, and then then you are really looking over your shoulder. So the fixtures, they will be key. I think they're out tomorrow. They will be key to the way this season plays out, because right now there's a few teams that just need a little victory, but it's not going to be easy. It ain't going to be easy.
You'll be anxious, Boyd. Listen, I'll let you go. I know you've got a new tumble dryer to unwrap and down there at the farm today.
Done this morning, shopping a lot.
That must be you down to your last shirt.
I don't deal with the tumble dryer. It's not for me, that.
Did Kris Sutton come down and fit it for you?
But by the way, he would have messed that up as well. He couldn't do that. He couldn't do that.
I'll leave you to it. I'm excited.
He actually bought me dinner on Saturday night, though. There's a surprise.
In Aberdeen?
Yes.
Fabulous.
By the time I got up there, because I flew up from Heathrow, big man had obviously went and done the radio, and he said, "I'll treat you to dinner." That's the first thing. That is the first thing I have had in 2 years, by the way. 2 years.
What did you have?
You don't want to know.
No.
You don't want to know.
Okay, I'll let you off with that.
You don't want to know.
Again, well, listen, thanks very much for your column in the newspaper on Saturday after Rangers have been in Spain to take on Athletic Bilbao, and we'll be back here for Go Ballistic next Monday when we can look back on the William Hill. Can't even get the sponsor wrong. On the Scottish Gas Scottish Cup semi-finals, Hearts against Aberdeen, St Johnstone against Celtic. A huge weekend. We might even be welcoming Falkirk back into the Premiership. We'll chat all about it next Monday, Boydie. Take care.
Cheers, Roger.